I want to start by saying that, with the success of the 6888 movie, I think this is also a story that needs to be told. Imagine standing in a uniform you fought to earn, knowing your country didn't want you in it. You trained in sweltering heat, under unfair conditions, all while proving you were just as capable as any other Marine. You're not in a Hollywood movie. You're a Montford Point Marine, part of a brotherhood that history nearly forgot, but not anymore. This is the untold story of the men who broke barriers and the hidden heroes who built the legacy of Black excellence in the U.S. Marine Corps. In 1942, the Marine Corps was finally forced to integrate, not by goodwill, but by Executive Order 8802, signed by President Franklin D. Roosevelt. It prohibited racial discrimination in the defense industry and allowed African Americans to enlist in the Marines for the first time in its 167-year history. But there was a catch. Black recruits were sent to a segregated base called Montford Point in Jacksonville, North Carolina. It wasn't the polished training ground like Parris Island. It was mosquito-infested, under-resourced, and intentionally isolated. Over 20,000 Black men trained there between 1942 and 1949. Many names never made it into textbooks, but they carried the weight of the nation on their shoulders while being treated like second-class citizens, and yet they endured. At Montford Point, these men were tested not only physically, but also mentally. Racism was woven into every part of military life. They faced verbal abuse, stricter punishments, and limited opportunities. Most were assigned support roles, such as ammo carriers, truck drivers, and stewards. But they trained with fierce determination. They lifted one another up. They created their own standard of excellence. Sergeant Major Gilbert Hashmark Johnson, one of the first Black drill instructors, set the tone. He was tough, unflinching, and deeply believed in transforming boys into men. Today, Camp Johnson is named in his honor. But for every Hashmark Johnson, there were hundreds more quiet giants who did their duty without ever asking for recognition. Montford Point Marines were deployed across the Pacific during World War II. From Saipan to Guam to Okinawa, they served heroically in often overlooked roles that were vital to the Allied victory. But behind the headlines and history books lie the names of men whose stories remain unsung. Private First Class Albert M. Brown, for example, served with courage and quiet dignity, helping secure critical positions under enemy fire. Luther Woodward, another trailblazer, exemplified what it meant to fight for a country that didn't yet fully accept him. Then there's Master Gunnery Sergeant Alfred Skip Rogers, who rose through the ranks post-war and became one of the highest-ranking African-American Marines of his time. His leadership and mentorship helped shape generations of Black Marines. And Max W. Daniels, Marine, advocate, and living link to Montford Point's legacy. A founding member of the Montford Point Marine Association, Daniels dedicated his life to preserving the memory of these brave men, making sure their stories would not be forgotten. These names, and thousands more, represent the heart and soul of Montford Point. Their heroism wasn't just on the battlefield. It was in their decision to stand up and serve, even when their own nation stood against them. Montford Point Marines weren't just background figures. They saw real combat in Saipan, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa. The 51st Defense Battalion, a segregated anti-aircraft unit, played a crucial role in defending strategic bases in the Pacific. They were the first and only Black unit in Marine Corps history at the time, and they held their ground under fire. Many were wounded, some were killed, most were never thanked. Their contributions didn't just serve the military, they served the moral progress of America. They proved, beyond a doubt, that courage has no color. When Montford Point Camp closed in 1949, integration into the larger Marine Corps began, but the names of those who paved the way were quickly forgotten. It wasn't until 2012, more than 70 years later, that Congress awarded the Montford Point Marines the Congressional Gold Medal, one of the nation's highest civilian honors. At the ceremony, aging Marines stood tall, some in wheelchairs, some with canes, saluting a flag that once flew over a country that refused to salute them back. Their stories had finally come full circle. Today, African Americans make up about 13% of the U.S. Marine Corps. They serve with honor, distinction, and leadership because the men of Montford Point made that possible. Their resilience, sacrifice, and quiet strength laid the foundation for generations to follow. And yet, many still don't know their names. That's why we tell these stories, not just to honor the past, but to inspire the present. Because the fight for dignity never ends. It only evolves. The story of the Montford Point Marines isn't just Black history. It's American history. These were men who fought two wars, one against a foreign enemy and another against racism at home. So when you see a Marine in uniform, remember, the path was not always equal. It was built by men who trained in segregation but served with honor. Men like Brown, Johnson, Rogers, Daniels, and thousands more whose stories are waiting to be told. Subscribe for the episode where we dive into the life of Sergeant Major Gilbert Hashmark Johnson, his discipline, leadership, and legacy as one of the first Black drill instructors in Marine Corps history. Give me a thumbs up emoji if you agree that this should be made into a movie.